So in this video I want to try and introduce the concept of explicit decision making in BFM rather than blindly accepting the circumstances we find ourselves in as inevitable. I think the failure to undertake an explicit decision making process sometimes, even a very brief one, is probably the single biggest reason for failure in our squadron, closely followed by poor situational awareness. Been trying to improve our situational awareness with the recent videos about formation, flying, and how that assists with spotting and mutual support, but wanted now to switch to decision making, and we used some footage from the last campaign rehearsal video to try and illustrate how this might occur and how it might be helpful. So in this first part of the footage, the first contact with the 109s has already occurred, and I'd made the decision not to fly under and into them, but instead extend to the south, and then when in the clear, climb above the cloud, regain altitude, and then turn to the north again to look for the 109s in a much more favourable situation than if I'd just continued due west straight into them at an energy disadvantage. So although I'm alone, I'm nice and high with good situational awareness. When I spot a section of 109s below me, I have a significant energy advantage because of the altitude, despite the difference in aircraft performance, and so decide I have an advantage and decide then to attack rather than escape or reposition. Don't want to focus too much on the tactics here of energy fighting rather than turn fighting, just the decision making about whether to attack, defend or escape. And when the wingman makes his unusual decision to split S, leaving his leader alone, I'm comfortable I still have an advantage and continue the attack, and it's poor marksmanship which stops me securing a better result. So after each pass, the priority is always to regain situational awareness, because it's impossible to make an assessment without proper situational awareness. So I climb up and look around, don't feel that anyone has the energy to attack me immediately before I spot another 109 climbing through the clouds, this time on his own, and so I appear to have an energy advantage, a position advantage, because I'm on behind his 3-9 line. If I'm lucky, perhaps surprise if he hasn't seen me, and so I attack. Again, I'm unsuccessful due to poor marksmanship, although obviously the shot here was harder with much higher deflection. And after that pass, once again, the priority is regain situational awareness to allow further decision making about advantage, disadvantage or neutral situation. This time, as I'm climbing after my attack, I notice a second 109 flying to the east at a much lower altitude just above clouds, and so I now have two enemy aircraft, although both at lower energy than me, and I still feel the situation is advantage me rather than neutral. However, at the top of my climb I spot a third aircraft coming in, also an enemy, who almost has a gun solution on me, and I need to kick my rudder over to try and spoil that solution. At this point the overall situation is probably neutral and maybe tipping towards disadvantage. To be honest, I probably should have taken the escape window there before it closed, but I thought the first two 109s didn't have the energy to come up and attack me, and forgetting I was no longer flying a Spitfire, felt comfortable holding my own against one co-energy 109. Furthermore, the second 109 appeared very vulnerable for an attack, and so regaining SA on the third 109 was obviously a very high priority, and I see him just in time to make the angles on his attack unfavourable, but now he clearly has an energy advantage over me, and I'm now at disadvantage with regards to energy, number of aircraft and position, and perhaps way too late I decide the situation is a disadvantage and I escape, diving through the cloud in the hope that this will cover me for long enough to use speed in the dive to extend away to the east. In the end, it turns out that I'm just successful, but I think in retrospect, looking at the footage, if the 109 pilot had persisted for longer, he could have closed the distance and shot me down. So I think that series of engagements with 5 109s has a potential to illustrate well the critical nature of decision making, specifically whether there's advantage, disadvantage or neutral position. No point did I feel the need to talk about ailerons, rudder, unloading the stick, or weapon loadouts with regards to success or failure. It was all about the decisions and SA. So in the second part of the video, I wanted to show the same fight from within the cockpit, and at the same time provide some more objective and explicit tools to assess the current situation and help us decide whether we are at an advantage, neutral or disadvantageous position in BFM. So for explicit decision making in BFM to be successful, you need to use a continuous cycle of assessing whether one is at advantage or disadvantage, choosing whether to attack, defend or escape, and then executing that decision before regaining situational awareness and repeating the cycle again. Assessment involves a relative comparison of the energy, aspect, closure, type and numbers of enemy aircraft, as well as your objectives, and some other miscellaneous features such as weather, including the direction of the sun, cloud cover, mist and wind. For those that really need it, I offer an acronym of REACT NOW to help remember that. The whole purpose of the assessment is to allow you to decide whether you are at an advantage and can therefore attack, whether the situation is neutral and you need to try and reposition for an advantage, or whether you are at a disadvantage already and so you have to immediately decide whether to defend or try and escape. So in this first fight, I assess I have advantage because of my relative energy, both regards to altitude and speed, my location behind the enemy, and that there are only two of them flying line astern, and so decide therefore to attack. If they had split into chandelles into opposite directions, a next assessment would probably be of a neutral position with rapid potential for a disadvantage, but instead the wingman split S, essentially taking himself out of the fight entirely, leaving me on the 6 of his leader with energy to burn, feeling very comfortable that I still have an advantage, and so continue to press the attack. After that attack, the priority is to conserve energy and simultaneously regain situational awareness and reassess the environment to decide whether I'm at an advantage to continue attacking or whether it's time to reposition or alternatively even consider escaping. A good look around doesn't show any threats. The next aircraft I spot is a lone 109 who is below me, albeit in a superiorly performing aircraft. I don't think he's got enough smash to catch me. I'm behind him, although there is large separation between us, so he certainly has a good opportunity to turn back in towards me for a more neutral situation. Certainly not neutral or disadvantage, so I attack. Once again, after the pass, the priority is to reassess, and I need situational awareness for that, so I look around. As I'm climbing, I see the second 109 also below me and with significantly lower energy, and make the decision at that point to continue the attack just as I spot the third 109. Here the situation is rapidly switching from advantage to neutral, or possibly even disadvantageous in view of the total numbers and how much energy the third 109 has. In retrospect, I think I should have attacked the second 109 but then continued to extend in a dive to the east at that point rather than climbing at the end of the attack as I do. Attack over, it's back to the A of ACE for assessment, and it's looking not so good at this time. This third 109 is aggressive with lots of energy and he's got good angles on me now, so I have to first defend and then escape. I'm sure if there was no cloud cover here, it would have been impossible for me to escape, given how late I left that decision. In conclusion, I think that decision making in BFM is best thought of as a continuous recurring cycle of assessment, choice making, and then executing that choice before reassessing again. It's impossible to do a meaningful assessment without situational awareness, which is why I've been focusing on that so much in recent weeks. Hopefully this will emphasize that point very well. But situational awareness followed by poor decisions will lead to inevitable failure. Sure, we might get the lucky shot and somebody flies across us, or we might find ourselves in a favourable position by chance as we come through the cloud and find a staffel below us. Practicing explicit decision making and then acting on that assessment, I think, has the potential to be the single most powerful influence on our performance in the months to come.